All right, we should be back in the building. We should be good to go up in here. Y'all know what time it is. You know what to do. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can see me. We're looking all crispy and clean on the screen. Hopefully y'all are doing well on this Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to everyone that's out there. And thank you to all of our servicemen and women in our military. And a special thank you to those who paid the ultimate price by giving their lives to fight for our freedoms here in the #1 country on the planet, the United States of America. I thank y'all so much for your sacrifice. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your Memorial Day. Hopefully you're enjoying your extended weekend too. I know some of y'all are off today, but here on the ClassE YouTube channel, you know we don't take any days off. And welcome, by the way. Welcome to another YouTube live stream. And welcome to the ClassE Morning Show. I'm your host, ClassE, at patreon.com/ClassEbeats, by the way. Make sure you click the link in the description, as well as in the pinned comment in the chat. Today, we're going to get into it. We got more news and more updates on the Diddy trial. We're going to go through some of the witnesses that were on the stand this past week. We missed a lot there, and I don't think it's being talked about enough. We've got Diddy's former assistant that's going to testify, and he got immunity. Why in the world would this guy get immunity? We're going to talk about that. We've also got the, I won't say world renowned, but nation renowned Dr. Hughes. Don Hughes is going to be up on the stand as psychologist who talked about some of the things that go on in these type of relationships that specifically Diddy and Cassie had. And then we've got some updates we're going to hear from some of the experts in the legal field on this Diddy trial. And to start the day, we're going to talk about Carmelo Anthony. If y'all don't know what's going on with that story there, we'll get into it shortly. But before I do, I gotta say what's up to the people, man. Shout out to everybody that's in the building. Good to see y'all on this holiday, this Memorial Day. We've got, oh, there's Amy's in there. Shout out to my awesome, amazing Amy, reminding y'all to click the video and click the like. We got Les Cleaver in here, my dog. Good morning to y'all. We've got a couple of new timers. Paulette's in here. We've got Lady E is in here as well. Good to see you, Lady E. We've got Sabrina. We've got Han Solo back at it. And Latanya's in here as well. I don't ask for much on the show, but if y'all could, please make sure you like the video on your way in. Not only is it free, not only does it help the channel continue to grow, but it lets the algorithm know you guys are enjoying the show, and it shares the video and the channel out with more people. Also, it takes less than a second to do. So if y'all could like the video, I would appreciate it. Shout out to the 300 plus of you that have liked the video so far. I know we're going to go ahead and get right into the content as long as y'all are ready. And again, please, if you could, make sure you like the video. We've got Adele is in here as well. Gigi Lynn's in the building. Good morning. Good to see you up in here. And Les Cleaver is off today, so we get Les in the chat for the entire show. This is going to be amazing. Good to see you in here as always, Les. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. This first story we're going to get to is about Carmelo Anthony. If you guys aren't familiar with what happened in this situation, it's alleged that this young man, Carmelo Anthony, was at a sporting event at his high school. There were some guys that were supposedly bullying him, or he had history or issues with in the past. They got into it. Obviously, this is at a school. Carmelo pulls out a knife. He stabs one of the kids that's there. The kid, unfortunately, passes away. And now it leads to this whole situation. You may have heard about a fundraiser that was done to get Carmelo out on bond. This young man is 17 years old. 17 years old. Very sad. And unfortunately, obviously, the kid that passed was young as well. They were both in high school. So we're going to get into some of the updates here. It's looking like Carmelo is going to be tried as an adult. Now, due to the nature of the crime, this doesn't surprise me much, but I want to give you guys a little bit of background on what happened, what went down, and then I'll give you the update on why he's being tried as an adult and what led up to this too. Here we go.
We're learning new details about what led to the stabbing Wednesday of a Frisco teenager at a track meet. Our Trevor Sahaki is live at the Frisco Municipal Court with the latest. So Trevor, do we know what started all of this in the first place?
Well, Karen, we do
man.
now. I just got the arrest report for 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony about an hour ago, and I've been going through it since then. Now, moments after he was arrested, Anthony confessed to the stabbing and told police it was in self-defense. Now, Anthony is in jail and charged with that murder. According to the arrest report, this happened around 10 a.m. on Wednesday.
Sad,
a witness told police Anthony was from Centennial High School, but was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. Austin Metcalf, the victim, told him to move. The witness told police Anthony said, quote, "Touch me and see what happens." Witnesses say Metcalf grabbed or pushed Anthony, who pulled a knife and stabbed him. According to various officers who responded, Anthony said things like, quote, "I was protecting myself," and, quote, "He put his hands on me." Officers also wrote that Anthony said, quote, "I did it," and asked if Metcalf was going to be okay. While officers didn't find the knife on Anthony, they did find blood on his fingers. Officers eventually found the knife in the bleachers. The police report says Metcalf died at the hospital about an hour after being stabbed. His father spoke with CBS News Texas.
My other son, who was there, was holding his hands on the hole, trying to save his life. He told me, "Dad," I looked at him. In his eyes, he was gone. He wasn't breathing. I need my son back, but that's not possible. All I can ask for is just pray.
That's so sad, man.
And we have reached out to Metcalf's mother and his twin brother, but both said they're not ready to speak with us. The district says there were security officers at the track meet and a clear bag policy, but they didn't respond to our questions about metal detectors. Live in Frisco, Trevor Sahaki, CBS News, Texas.
And interesting, obviously this kid's out of school. You're not supposed to have a weapon at school, period. Anywhere in and around the school. I don't care if unless you're a law enforcement or maybe security, you can have a weapon there. But even if you're a licensed firearm holder, you should not have a weapon in that school. So it turned into a whole thing. Obviously, Karmelo, he was arrested and he was given a bond. A lot of people came forward and they supported him, and then he ended up getting released on bond. So here's the story there.
Of the Collin County Jail this afternoon after posting bond. Thanks for joining us here at 5 on a Monday. I'm Nicole Baker.
And I'm Doug Dunbar. So let's dive into it. Carmelo Anthony had been in jail since the 2nd of April, accused still today of killing another teenager. That's Austin Metcalf. And that accused killing happened at a track meet at a high school. Today, a judge reduced Anthony's bond from $1 million all the way down to $250,000. J.D. Miles was there for it. He's live for us right now outside the Collin County Jail. Anthony just left. We saw the video. What else do we need to know?
That's right, Doug and Nicole. Just 6 hours or about that much time after a judge lowered his bond, Carmelo Anthony was released. The judge who made the decision warned the accused murderer that if he violates any terms of his probation or tries to leave his home, he will be brought back right here to the Collin County Jail.
You better stay his butt at home.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the victims?
Carmelo Anthony emerged from the Collin County Jail 13 days after his arrest for the murder of Austin Metcalf. The high school student had nothing to say as he headed to his parents' home, where he will be confined to an ankle monitor. It's the result of a hearing this morning over whether to lower his bond. The families of both Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf arrived at the Collin County Courthouse this morning with extra security in and around the courtroom. A new defense attorney representing the Frisco teen accused of murder had his client's father testify about his son's character, telling the judge he was a captain of his football and track teams and that he held 2 jobs while in school. He's an A student, said Andrew Anthony. Does he have plans to go to college? Yes, sir.
And prior to this, what was on his mind was what college he was going to go to. This is a tragedy all the way around for both families.
Anthony, who told Frisco police he stabbed 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a track meet in self-defense after an altercation, sat in a jail jumpsuit and shackles, while prosecutors challenged how the father could not afford the 10% needed for a $1 million bond, with an online donation fund that's up to $400,000 and
it's
growing.
gone up since then.
With access to over $400,000, why haven't you bonded him out yet? Asked the prosecutor. We don't have access to that money, replied the father.
It's hard for everybody to be level-headed at a time like this.
Very sad.
So that's where we come in. It's our job to be level-headed, to be fact-based, and to follow the truth wherever it leads.
And prosecutors revealed today that Carmelo Anthony was involved in an assault-type altercation at his school on February 4th that was handled internally by the school district.
Allegedly.
Other than that, he has an unblemished record, which is probably one of the reasons why the judge agreed to lower his bond. Live in McKinney, J.D. Miles, CBS News, Texas.
All right, so now let's get into this article from the Daily Wire, getting to the charges for Carmelo Anthony. Teen charged with killing Austin Metcalf to be tried as an adult. Oh, man. Don't want to see that. Don't want to see anyone die at a track meet at a high school for any reason, but oof. Carmelo Anthony will likely face life in prison. Oh, my gosh. With a chance at parole in 40 years. The teen who's been charged in the murder of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf will be tried as an adult in Texas. You do not want that to happen in Texas. Last month, Metcalf was stabbed at a high school track meet after reportedly telling Carmelo Anthony, 17, that he was sitting in the wrong seat. As we heard, Carmelo Anthony went to one high school. These guys went to another high school. Carmelo Anthony was on the opposing high school side, and they told him to leave. Anthony has been charged with first-degree murder and, according to an arrest warrant, told police of the fatal stabbing, "I did it." Dang. Anthony will be tried as an adult since Texas is a concurrent jurisdiction state, according to Capital B. The law allows prosecutors to charge minors, typically 16 or 17 years old, as adults with certain crimes. The Collin County District Attorney's Office, which is north of Dallas, is prosecuting the case of Metcalf's apparent murder. Anthony was charged with first-degree murder in April by a grand jury, but a grand jury will review the evidence and decide whether to formally indict on that charge or on a lesser charge like manslaughter, Capital B reported. If Anthony is convicted of first-degree murder, he could face life in prison with a chance at parole after 40 years. He will not face the death penalty. That's insane. Absolutely insane. The Supreme Court has said not only can you not seek the death penalty against someone who committed a crime when they're 17, you can't even get them life without parole. Interesting. That would not be something we could do even if we wanted to, Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis said, according to the New York Post. As highlighted by the Daily Wire last month, Anthony's bond was initially set at $1 million, but a Collin County judge agreed to lower the bond to $250,000 and granted Anthony house arrest at his parents' home. The racially charged case made headlines again earlier this month when it was reported that Anthony was allowed to graduate high school. We're going to get into that in a second. Jeff Metcalf, the father of Austin Metcalf, said he wanted answers about the decisions to allow Anthony to graduate high school, but he was stonewalled by the Frisco Independent School District Superintendent Mike Waldrop. We're going to get into that in a second. I'm sure this father just wants some answers. And right now, after losing a child, I'm sure he wants the entire world to pay for what happened to his kid, and especially Carmelo Anthony. So we're not going to read this full article. I will post the article in the description for y'all if you want to check this out from the Daily Wire. But I do want to fast forward and get into what's going on with Carmelo Anthony getting his diploma and allegedly being allowed to graduate. How does that work? We're going to find out.
Criticism and a father now demanding answers. CBS Texas learned last night that Carmelo Anthony will get his diploma. Anthony is the Frisco High School student accused in the deadly stabbing of Austin Metcalf. Well, Metcalf's father now wants to confront the district superintendent about this decision. Our J.D. Miles was the only local reporter there. He brings us the story tonight.
He says he just wants answers, but when Jeff Metcalf arrived at Frisco ISD's administration building, this is what he got.
Hi there, can I help you?
Yeah, I'd like to come in and speak to someone, please.
I'm sorry, we're not allowed to let anyone in without an appointment.
The father of Austin Metcalf wanted to hear directly from Frisco ISD Superintendent Mike Waldrop what he heard from media reports on Tuesday. Those reports are that Carmelo Anthony will get his diploma later this month, despite being under house arrest and charged with murdering Metcalf's son, Austin.
I've been stonewalled said, I understand the protocol. They said I have to make an appointment, which I did.
It was 6 weeks ago today when what authorities describe as an altercation between Austin and Karmelo led to one 17-year-old pulling a knife and stabbing the other 17-year-old in the chest at a track meet inside a Frisco ISD stadium. Anthony's parents, who claim their son was just defending himself, asked Frisco ISD to allow him to get his high school diploma. Sources say an agreement was reached that would allow that.
So I'm just curious on how they arrived at it when I read their own policy manual about what it states for mandatory expulsion and also graduation.
I can imagine if you get accused of stabbing someone, you might not get to stay at school. I guess it all depends on the timing of this. As y'all know or may not know, this is all taking place 3 weeks ago, so it's pretty close to the end of the year. Still, being expelled maybe a month, even 2 months before graduation just seems kind of wild. So it's hard to remove and separate things when it's this type of heated situation, but it's all pretty strange.
Or mandatory expulsion and also graduation.
In a statement to CBS News Texas, a representative...
Because think about it. Which is, with all due respect to the Metcalf family, if you put the alleged murder aside, even bringing a knife to school and using it, pulling it out, in a lot of school districts, that would be mandatory expulsion on itself. If you bring and you're found bringing a knife to school, they got to get you out of there.
For the Anthony family tells us, we cannot and will not speak about the agreement made with Frisco ISD that remains confidential and legally protected.
Wow.
However, it is truly a shame that anyone would go so far as to threaten a graduation ceremony or try to ruin a day that should be filled with joy, pride, and accomplishment for so many students and their families.
Yeah, except the Metcalf family because their son's dead. What? Anyway.
Be filled with joy, pride, and accomplishment for so many students and their families. Frisco ISD superintendent posted a message on social media last night, making it clear that Anthony will not be allowed to attend a graduation ceremony. No student who commits a serious criminal offense is permitted to participate in the graduation ceremony. But sources say Anthony's GPA was high enough to withstand missing the last month of school and still meet the requirements for a diploma. The school district tells CBS News Texas, if the student is expelled, they may continue their education through the Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program. In cases where a student has completed all graduation requirements and is facing expulsion, Frisco ISD typically gives the option of early graduation instead of placement at JJAEP. The controversy has resulted in a new online petition to award Metcalf an honorary diploma next year when he would have graduated along with his twin brother.
I should not laugh, but I'm laughing because it's so obnoxious. I mean, again, I don't know. Y'all have to, this is a very interesting conversation. Do you all feel like he should have got his diploma? As I mentioned before, 4 weeks away. He had such a high GPA, was such a good student that he could have missed the end of school and been completely fine, especially if you're able to do your testing either proctored. This is so weird.
The controversy has resulted in a new online petition to award Metcalf an honorary diploma next year when he would have graduated along with his twin brother.
The fact of the matter is it's not going to bring my son back. I mean, it's a nice gesture, but in the long run, my son doesn't get a diploma. So there's part of me that says maybe Mr. Anthony shouldn't get one either.
In Frisco, J.D. Miles, CBS News, Texas.
What a weird situation, especially with the diploma. I'm not going to ask y'all how you would feel about this because I can imagine being the father of. Yeah, let me know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat. Did the school district do the right thing? Should he have gotten his diploma 4 weeks away from graduating? Even though the mandatory expulsion, it sounds like, might have not allowed him to get his diploma. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. My goodness. I cannot imagine. And then we still have to get to the trial, right? Lord. Y'all say, no, he shouldn't get it. KH is in the building. Shout out to KH in here this morning with the 20 bomb. Thank you so much, KH. I appreciate you. Says, thanks for the great coverage. Appreciate you. I appreciate you as well. Thank you for going the extra mile and supporting the community and supporting the channel. I appreciate it. It's good to see you here as well. Shout out to KH with this first super chat of the day. I will be reading super chats as we go throughout the show as well. Also, thank you to all 500 plus of you that are in here. If you haven't yet, please make sure that you like the video on your way in. Dottie is in the building. Shout out to Dottie. Hope you're feeling better. It's good to see you this morning. Also, I say, no, he shouldn't get one. He probably could have graduated early anyway, had he not been involved in sports. Fair point. Sports was probably the only reason he was still even in school. I could never imagine losing a child. And if you're going to cry self-defense from a legal standpoint, we can have that conversation. But this kid being murdered for whatever words he was saying, even if he maybe put his hands on Carmelo Anthony, he might have pushed him, got up in his face. To have his life lost, it's just, it's not right. And then on top of that, Carmelo shouldn't have had a knife at the school anyway. So again, I haven't seen all the evidence. I've just heard the stories and done some research earlier today. So I don't know. It's hard for me to look at this and say, especially if he did have a knife and he is the one that did it. But innocent until proven guilty. Y'all know how we handle things on this channel. We'll have to wait and see. Let him have it as good chance he could be in jail for life. But we will see what the trial says. Ugh. Good morning to y'all and happy Memorial Day as well. Hopefully y'all are enjoying your extra day off if you got one. A good old-fashioned fight would have not resulted in this end. I mean, people getting good old-fashioned fights and it doesn't end well. People getting fights over dice games to get shot. People have lost their life over less. It's crazy. It's wild. With that logic, if someone shoulder checks you, it's life threatening. Yeah, someone shoulder checks you and says, hey, get out of my way. We'll have to see what the law says, because again, it's tough when we look at common sense and logic like we're talking about, and then we talk about what the law says. In some cases, they're two totally different things, which is unfortunate. So how you would handle it, how we think it should be handled versus what the law says and what the law allows are in a lot of cases two different things. Good morning to you as well, Melissa. Shout out to all the members in here. Good to see y'all in here. LTO, Melissa R, Danny in real life. I see you. Valencia is in the building as well. Amy says, that kid threw his whole life away, basically. And even if he's found not guilty on all charges, I mean, what do you do after this? I don't know. I'm saying a weapon-free fight. Well, yeah, for sure. But if you get into, in a lot of states, if you get into a weapons-free fight, especially like a state in Florida, if you feel like you're in imminent danger and someone punches you and you're going back and forth and you pull out a gun and they're gone, you're legally allowed to do that. So I wouldn't even, and I'm teaching, this is what I teach my son, like, just, it's not even worth it to get into that situation. You de-escalate, you remove yourself from the situation. And just because somebody said some words and asked you to move seats, it's like, it's a seat. You're under the wrong tent. Walk away. All right, whatever. Come on. But again, they are kids, so it's tough. They are sent to alternative school, but if they are on house arrest due to his age, they still have to allow him to graduate because he is a minor. But he's being tried as an adult, which is wild. Again, make sure y'all like the video on your way in. If you haven't yet, let's go ahead and get into our next topic. Equal force. Floridians are shooting people over mayonnaise. It's a fact. Florida is wild. Florida is a fun state to visit, but I'm gonna be honest. I could never live in Florida. Not with the laws the way they are. So let's get into some more Diddy news. So we're going to go back in time a little bit, y'all. We'll do a little bit of a rewind and go back to the end of last week with what's going on with this Diddy trial. And we had some interesting news about a former assistant that worked for Diddy. Not only did he testify last week, and we're going to get into his testimony shortly, but he testified and he was granted immunity. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would his former assistant need immunity, especially if he's only testifying for a short amount of time? Well, one reason I could think of is he doesn't want to be mentioned in this RICO. So we're going to go ahead and get into the update here from ABC News, and then we'll read some of his testimony from last week. Y'all make sure you like the video on your way in. Here we go.
Now to the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. A former employee of the music mogul was granted immunity today. Without it, George Kaplan signaled his intention to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Now that he's got immunity, Kaplan is expected soon to take the witness stand. Earlier today, prosecutors called an expert witness, psychologist Dr. Dawn Hughes. She testified about why it's common for victims to stay in abusive relationships.
And we're going to get into Dawn Hughes' testimony as well. If y'all are watching this video, make sure you check out the next video where we review and go over Dawn Hughes and not only her background, but also her testimony specifically. Dawn, she's been involved in a lot of these high profile cases like R. Kelly, Johnny Depp, and we'll get into that at a later point.
About why it's common for victims to stay in abusive relationships. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all the charges. His lawyers argue that any acts of assault do show domestic violence, but not coercion or evidence of trafficking. Those are the big charges. Legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer joins me now outside of court. So, Brian, you've been in this court. How significant is this immunity
deal? It's definitely
deal,
smart for him to get immunity.
Terry, it's a big deal because just think about the confines of how that immunity deal works. We heard that Kaplan would have pled the Fifth if he was to take the stand, meaning that his statements would have incriminated him. Don't forget, this is a RICO conspiracy case, so two or more people conspiring to commit criminal acts. And so the idea that I'm seeing here is that Kaplan would have testified to something that would have incriminated him and Sean Combs. Now he doesn't have to worry about incriminating himself, and he can give a full breath testimony as to what criminal actions he participated in, and more likely than not, how he did so at the behest of Sean Combs. And the directions of this case is going to turn, I think, in a way that shows this criminal enterprise is bigger than what we initially thought.
Yeah, and psychologist Dawn Hughes on the witness stand today, Brian, testifying about victims in abusive relationship. She's not interviewed anyone in the case directly. What do jurors do with testimony like this?
So Dawn Hughes is someone famous for this testimony. She's testified in the Keith Raniere case, the R. Kelly case, the Harvey Weinstein case. And what she does in her testimony is what we call a blind expert, because to your point, she hasn't interviewed anyone in this case, whether it be alleged victim or alleged perpetrator. She hasn't heard any of the testimony in the case or researched any of the documents associated with this case. She's simply creating a framework of why individuals stay in violent relationships, different coping mechanisms, what else does she have? The patterns of disclosure, as well as how memory is affected in traumatic experiences. And it's with that framework that the jury is supposed to then evaluate the testimony of Cassie and other alleged victims. But to your point, and on cross-examination as well, this is just a framework. She hasn't interviewed anyone, so she doesn't know if anyone's exaggerating or lying about their symptoms.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer, thanks for being there at the courthouse for us. See you later. Well, make sure to catch our daily show on this high-profile trial. It's called Burden of Proof, the case against...
And shout out to ABC News for that. So let's go ahead and get into her actual testimony. And again, shout out to Inner City Press, the #1 place to go for coverage on this Diddy trial. Not only have they been giving up-to-date tweets and insights into what's happening in trial, but you also give a play-by-play as to what testimony is being said in the courtroom. So let's check this out. I want to look at this witness, Mr. Kaplan, the former assistant of Diddy, and we're going to hear some of his testimony and what actually went on behind the scenes here. All right. So we've got a new attorney that is, well, not necessarily new, but someone who's taking on a lot of these witnesses moving forward. We're going to call them Batch or Botch. Hopefully I say their name right. Either way, let's get into what happened in court here. The judge says the next witness, the state says the government calls a George Kaplan to the stand. All right, Mr. Kaplan, when did you work for Comb Enterprises, 2013 to 2015? So right near the end. What fell under the holding company? Clothing, liquor, entertainment. I was an executive assistant to the chief operating officer. Where did you work? He worked in New York. What was your next position? He said executive assistant to the chairman, Mr. Combs, from September 14th to September 15th, 2014 to 2015. Who did you report to? Mr. Coram, KK as they called him. She essentially ran Mr. Combs' life. Where did you report? To LA. What did you do? Kaplan said he carried his bags, made sure, I think is what Inner City Press meant to say, made sure things were when he wanted them. As he trusted me more, he had me around more. I set up his hotel rooms and such and such. How many hours a week? 80 to 100 hours a week. Jeez. How much did you get paid? $125,000 a year to start. What did you do in the morning? Make sure everything was in the bathroom. The breakfast was cooked. He was recording a mixtape, so we worked late. All right, let's keep going here. Who was his security? Uncle Paulie, D-Rock, Ruben, later licensed security in the second half of 2015. How frequently did you communicate with Mr. Combs? Multiple times a day. Things could be found in the back, an iPad, drugs, whatever. Did he threaten you? He threatened my job. How often? Maybe monthly. Oh, Lord. He say he was only to be surrounded by the best people and that he wasn't. For example, he went for me for a 1 liter water. I brought back 2 half liters. He said no. Okay, so I think he wanted for me to bring a 1 liter. Okay. Anyway, the state says, how did you travel? On his jet or going in advance to make sure it's all set up? How did you set up the hotel rooms? There was a bag. I unpacked it. Clothes, candles, Astroglide, baby oil. Oh, God. Who bought this? Often me. In what cities did you set up hotel rooms? And we can see here through his testimony maybe why he needed immunity. He brought the baby oil. He brought the Astroglide, the candles, maybe some recording devices. Yikes. In what cities did you set up hotel rooms? LA, New York, Miami. In LA, Mr. C, Bel Air, the C, and the Intercontinental. In New York, Trump, by Columbus Circle. In Miami, the SLS. How was it booked? Frank Black, based on Biggie Frank White. Would you clean up the rooms? Yes. Bottles of baby oil, Gatorade. Once brown crystallized powder on the counter of the bathroom sink. Oh. Why did you clean up? Not the hotel staff. It was implied. Protect his public image. I was keen on doing that. So he was the cleanup man. Explain. And then there's an objection. Overruled, says the judge. I found hotels would sell photos to newspapers to shame guests. Interesting. Did he reach out to you from the room? For food, clothes, sometimes drugs? I did. What drugs? Dope kit or DOP kit. Illegal drugs? I object to the same term, illegal. What other drugs? Advil, ketamine. What's he asking for? I picked up drugs for him. MDMA. Who asked? Diddy asked in LA and in Miami. And then he says, in Miami, Diddy asked me to call a person. He came and gave me a bag of pills, MDMA. I gave him cash. I gave the pills to Diddy. And in LA, I went out and met the person in Hollywood. I gave money. He gave me a bag. And the judge says, we will break for the day. Oh my goodness. So I wonder, there was a gentleman that was arrested in connection to Diddy. And it seemed like this was the person who was Diddy's drug mule, essentially, that ran drugs back and forth between Diddy and maybe Mr. Kaplan. So I wonder if his testimony is going to be coming up next. Let me know what y'all think about this, because we've got a little bit more. As we know, Mr. Kaplan came back the following day and testified before Kid Cudi took the stand. So I want to get into his testimony once he came back the next day, because we still get to hear some interesting information from him. Here we go. So the court comes back in session. They're getting ready for Kid Cudi. The judge says, let's get Mr. Kaplan back on the stand. And he comes back in. The state says, when did you carry cash for Diddy? And he says, $50,000 on his private jet. Did you pick up cash for Diddy? $10,000 at Western Union from Comb Enterprises. How long or what long-term relationship did Mr. Combs, what long-term relationships of Mr. Combs were you aware of? Cassie, Kim, Gina. Uh-oh, who's Gina? Who was Kim, the mother of his children? Cassie, his girlfriend. Gina, another girlfriend. Man. The state says the jet flight to Las Vegas. What was the layout of the jet? He says there were 4 chairs, our partition. I had a partial view over my right shoulder. When you witnessed violence by Diddy on Miss Ventura, on Cassie, why didn't you intervene? He said, my career. Oh, dang. He said, hey, listen, guys, I needed this job. All right. So he had his hand crossed. It's a cold world, man. After the last glass breaking, what did Diddy do? He came forward. Cassie stayed in the back. He asked me to get creams to conceal the bruising on her face. Oh, this was at the hotel, must be. How did you pay for it? Corporate credit card. Rico. Why did you leave Comb Enterprises? I didn't think I should be covering things up, like buying the witch hazel. Also, my father had prostate cancer. Oh, that's terrible. Any of violence? He threw things at Gina in the entryway of the main home to the Star. I don't know what that is. What was he throwing? Green apples. How hard? Very hard. Later, I took the medicine bag into the room. Mr. Combs waited for me to leave quickly. Then what? I heard Gina at the gate and male voices. Who? Security, he says. When you left, what did you do? He says, I collected myself, then went to work for an integrated marketing firm. Right now, we get to cross-examination, and this is led by Diddy's lead attorney here, Mr. A, because Agnifilo. I always mess up his name. I think it's Agnifilo. Y'all correct me in the comments. So, cross-examination. Why did you go to work for Comb Enterprises? He was an incredible entrepreneur. True. I have learned from him. What did Brian do as the COO? Ensuring profitability of each unit. I was an employee when Revolt TV launched. Tell me about it. We're on the 6th floor of the 1710 Broadway. Everyone was there. It was momentous. Diversity was important to Diddy, wasn't it? Specifically for African Americans. What did Blue Flame do? Marketing for Ciroc. What is Diageo? They own Johnny Walker and others. Diddy set up an marketing entity for Ciroc. Your job, what was it? For example, Diddy would say, "We are going to leave the house." He meant 3 to 5 minutes. I had to check the list for the bags and toiletry. It was a bad look in me. It was a bad look for me, I think is what he meant to put, if something wasn't there. Is there a binder near you? I can't read that. It says Southern District. I'm handing you something to refresh your recollection. Take a look, as long as you want to. You ran an off-site training, a graduate from Harvard Business School, also Kenny Burns. I remember. You were effective, right? I worked hard. I don't know how you'll answer. Was it good or bad? It was complicated. Interesting. He didn't need to yell at you when you had brought 2 waters. He didn't need to yell at you when you brought 2 waters. I worked hard. Okay. Who was Biggie? A huge rapper who unfortunately passed away. Wasn't Biggie's birthday a holiday at Comb Enterprises? Yes. Was it in creative environment? Absolutely. It attracted all kinds of creative people, lawyers, musicians, advertising people. A few specific questions. You used a corporate credit card? Yes, I did. How did Mr. Combs pay? He says KK held his wallet with a black Amex in it. You have no reason to think he kept track of how baby oil was paid for. No reason. Or applesauce. Oh gosh, what was with the applesauce? He loves applesauce, they said. This is crazy. On cheeseburgers? He smiles. On everything. Lord. Let's talk about the plane. You heard glass breaking. You didn't see it? I didn't see it. The incident with Gina. You walk into the house. There's a thin table. I don't know. You don't remember how a person could get out of the gate at a 2-star island? No, I just heard screaming and commotion. Screams of terror, or how can I open this gate? I don't know how to distinguish between the two. It's a fair answer. He threatened your jobs, but did he physically threaten you? No. You talked about Kim Porter, how she was different. His respect for her. They had incredible kids. Thank you. When you set up a hotel room for Diddy and Mrs. Porter, there was no baby oil, right? There were lotions. You expressed caution about hotels. Why did you clean up the rooms afterwards? Hotel staff could sell photos. Everyone wants a payday, including you, Mr. Kaplan. Am I right? Mr. Look the Other Way, immunity. You sent him a photo of him. You sent him a photo of him and Kim Porter after she died. I was heartbroken for him. You were close. I invited him to my wedding. So this guy who was beating up on all these chicks and doing God knows what with baby oil, who knows what Mr. Kaplan saw, he invited Diddy to his wedding. Hey, yo. All right. I won't judge, I guess. He says, objection. Surprise looks. You respected him? Yes. What's this photo of? Me, KK, and Diddy at airport. He just got on the jet. This was why there's champagne. You're happy there, right? No, refresh it. It's that I was glad I had found the mascara in the back seat. They found you and subpoenaed you, correct? I had to retain counsel right away. No further questions. Redirect? Yes, here we go with the redirect. What incident shook you? The plane with Cassie and the apples with Gina. But he still invited him to his wedding. I wonder when he got married, because that's interesting if all this happened and then he invited Diddy to his wedding. People are so strange. He says, I felt guilty. I didn't do anything after the incident with Cassie on the plane, but you didn't see any injuries. People can be injured without injuries being visible. Okay, the deflection. Just answer the question, sir. The tonality and tension with the apples he threw at Gina, it was troubling. Did you see injuries or not? You told KK about both incidents. Yes. And I told her I'm unwilling to stand behind this behavior. That I was quitting. Did Christina say she would quit? No. How long did she stay after you told her? Until recently. All right. And then that's where we get Kid Cudi in here. Let me know what y'all think about this testimony. Definitely seems like a smart move on him and his representation's part to get this immunity, because he was all up in this thing and saw a lot of things and turned a blind eye to a lot of things too. But he said he quit shortly after what happened to Gina. Maybe we give him some props there. Either way, y'all let me know what you think in the comments in the chat. Oh my goodness. And shout out to everyone saying good morning. Good morning to Julie up in here. I see ya. And Les said, wow, this case is going to be very harmful to Diddy. Yeah, it's not going to be good. And I'm not seeing anything yet to discount any of the evidence against Diddy. Oh gosh, yeah. Another failed ex-worker. Yeah, this is super, super weird. Thank you again to everyone that's in here and has liked the video so far too. So actually, let me see. How do I want to do this? We might save that one for later. I know a lot of y'all were giving so much grief for how I expressed how I felt about Cassie specifically and her being a victim, or her as a victim. And I think the reason a lot of this is getting lost is because I'm looking at it through the lens of trafficking. I'm not saying Cassie wasn't abused. Clearly she was abused. And I think this entire case should be a domestic violence case. Although I don't see the feds pursuing that. They wanted the RICO, they want the trafficking, and that's why we are where we are right now. So now what we're going to hear is we're going to hear from another attorney. Well, not an attorney, another expert is what I want to say. Don Hughes. Now, Don Hughes does have a history of being a witness, or as they call her, a blind witness in a lot of high profile cases. She was a witness or an expert witness in the R. Kelly trial. She was an expert witness in the Johnny Depp trial. She's an expert witness in this trial as well as multiple others. So what I want to do is I found some interesting video from her past testimonies so we can hear kind of how she thinks and what she says. And then we'll actually get into her testimony when she testified in this Diddy trial a few days ago. All right, so check this out. This one was from the first trial with Johnny Depp, or the first time we heard from her in the Johnny Depp trial.
Of the opinion was looking at all the dynamics in this relationship, looking at not just the hitting and the yelling, but looking at how much more hitting was done, looking at the coercive control, the obsessive jealousy, the possessiveness, the sexual violence, the choking behavior, the threats to kill. Those are all, as I stated, very significant and often found in cases of lethal domestic violence.
And the interesting thing about this is we know how the Johnny Depp trial turned out. A lot of people were upset with Don Hughes for her take and her insight here, because it was later found out that Johnny was the actual victim and not Amber Heard.
Those were significant severity factors, and looking at all those, that's what tipped the scales, that even though she yelled and said some horrible things and hit him, it never was able to shift the balance of power and control in that relationship. Of the opinion
all right, so then we also have more from Dawn and what she said in this trial.
I said to you, hey, tell Travis what just happened.
Oh, you told me to do it. You told me to. You said, go do that.
I said, no, tell him what just happened.
And I lied.
And that you punched me in the fucking thing. And
you figured it out.
And you said, no, fucking, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? And I watched you lie. And then
I didn't punch you, by the way. I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
Oh, look at Amber.
You know, you've been in a lot of fights, been around a long time.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
No, when you fucking have a close
you didn't get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you. I don't know what the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are you?
What am I supposed to do? Do this? I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are. That's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Dang.
You are such a baby. Grow the fuck up,
Did you
Johnny.
start physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
We got to go back and rewind this trial one day. I didn't cover the Johnny Depp trial, but I did watch the lead attorney cover this, and this whole thing was an absolute mess. Amber Heard just sitting there emotionless after being caught lying so much and ruining this guy's career. Is disgusting.
You did, so I had to get the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You're admirable.
You agree with Ms. Heard that it's admirable to retreat from a fight?
Is it admirable? It is admirable to retreat from a fight.
Yeah. Anything about this tape suggest to you that it's characteristic of reactive violence?
In this instance, if true, if she said she hit him first, then that would not be reactive violence.
Okay, there we go. So we know Dawn Hughes, she does have a little bit of objectivity, but let's go ahead and get into her actual testimony and see what she had to say about Diddy and Cassie here. All right. So we have a redirect here. The judge is asking for the previous witness. They say no. Next government witness. The government calls Dr. Dawn Hughes to the stand. What is your profession? Clinical and forensic psychology. I treated people who were in World War II, which was such an honor. Very fitting for Memorial Day. How many times have you testified in court? 60 to 65 times in the Southern District of New York, in the Northern District, and other states. Wow. We offer Dr. Hughes as an expert. No objection, says the defense. What do you anticipate covering? Dr. Hughes says, why victims stay and memory. This is going to be interesting. Have you been retained by the government? Yes. What is your hourly rate? $600. $600 for the day in court. Wow. Why do victims stay? This is the question that everyone wants to know. There are psychological bonds and the psychological consequences of the abuse. What are the levels of fear? It ranges from physical violence to butterflies. Violence doesn't have to happen all the time. Interesting. What is psychological violence? Intimidation, throwing things, telling you what you can do and where you can go. Objection. Hold on, says the judge. I'm going to strike that last answer. And then the state says, what can be the role of sexual abuse? Dr. Hughes says, it puts the victim in significant psychological fear. Why does it prevent leaving? Shame, degradation. They don't want to think about it. What is emotional abuse? Putting down our partner, feeling like a piece of crap. What about financial dependence? The abusers control housing and transportation, taking away her laptop. Objection. Sustained. Come on, Dawn Hughes now. I thought she was a blind witness. Blind witness meaning that, as you heard, she didn't interview any of them. Obviously, she knows what's going on in this case, so she's testifying in that way. Are you familiar with love bombing? The honeymoon phase. The abuser showers her with gifts, and affection to get her back. Does the attempt to leave happen over time? Yes, it takes multiple attempts. Which is the most common coping mechanism? Trying to work it out because of the trauma bond. You don't want to lose your partner. Personal coping mechanism. How does placating or appeasing work? We're trying to avoid abuse. What is minimization? The victim says, maybe they had a bad day at work. Maybe they were intoxicated. It's a way to stay in the relationship, but it increases their risk. Oh my goodness. It's a way to stay in the relationship, but it increases their risk. It's not a long-term strategy, but it gets from one assaultive episode to the next. So it basically buys time. What about the power relation? A person can have a power as a principal of a school. The victim asks, who is going to believe me? When does the victim finally speak? In a safe environment or after psychological help? What type of language do victims use when they first speak of it? They minimize. They are piecemeal. They remember the chipping paint on the ceiling, the smell of alcohol on the perpetrator's breath. And then they go to the sidebar and then cross-examination. It will be by Jonathan Bach. All right. Alexander Shapiro's husband, only recently brought on as Combs' 10th lawyer. Okay, so he's brand new. We've got Bach says, your clients, you observe them closely, their cognitive style. Dr. Hughes says yes. People don't fit into boxes, right? Dr. Hughes says there are categories, but you have to listen to particular individuals, right? Dr. Hughes says, I'm not divorced from my training. Interesting. Bach says, when you do forensic work, you want a lot of sources of information, right? If it's relevant, you look at police reports, witness reports, and correct? Correct, says Dr. Hughes. You're familiar with malingering? What's malingering? And he says and Dr. Hughes obviously says yes. Bach says people can fabricate emotional responses, correct? Yes, they can, says Dr. Hughes. The judge says, Mr. Bach, should be a break here. Bach says, I don't have a good cliffhanger. Okay. Shout out to him. And then during the break, they had to talk about, interestingly enough, Kaplan and his Fifth Amendment rights, or him giving up his right to plead the Fifth. All right. So let's go back into the rest of what Dr. Hughes says after the break. Here we go. Your Honor, we've emailed the exhibit over the break, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about that. Okay, we'll pick it up after Dr. Hughes. Please come back on the stand. Dr. Hughes gets ready. Here we go. You are with the American Psychological Association, which says you should only render an opinion after an examination, right? And they say, where? Dr. Hughes says, this is a different role. Interesting. You have not gathered information about this case, right? Dr. Hughes says, I am not rendering an opinion on any individual. Come on. Dr. Hughes now. If that's the case, why would she bring up somebody controlling where somebody else goes? Come on. I'm not buying it. Either way, we'll let her have this one. You have not gathered any information about this case, right? Dr. Hughes says, I'm not rendering an opinion on any individual. There's someone named Cassie, but you don't know what she said, right? Dr. Hughes says, I don't.
Stop the cap.
You testified across the river in the Eastern District of New York, right? Yes, says Dr. Hughes. And you say the same thing, even though those cases are different, correct? It's to help the jurors to understand. But it's their job to consider their case, correct? You don't publish data on the patients you've evaluated, do you? It's confidential, says Dr. Hughes. So I can't cross-check your experience, the basis of what you are saying, right? People might go to a civil lawyer to make money, right? Objection, says the state. Let's move on, says the judge. In civil litigation, you might look for malingering, right? I got to figure out what malingering means. He also says, you gave a webinar about giving expert witness testimony. Is that correct? And Dr. Hughes says, yes, for battered women. Let me show you. And then they have to go to a sidebar. During the sidebar, and I'm shout out to the sidebars, Inner City Press says the exhibit is shown from the Star Island raid, Baby Oil, and Astro God. Oh my goodness. What? Right. The judge says, we're going to send you to the jury room for a bit. So the jury leaves. And then they come back and they say, yesterday, Mr. Shapiro submitted an exhibit ex parte. Now reviewing a document. What should I focus on? It should show this witness has a bias. Ooh. The judge says she can be shown the document about the training domestic violence advocates and asked if she remembers, but I won't admit it as evidence until she denied it and it becomes prior inconsistent statement. So the witness re-enters with the jury. Bach continues. Does the document refresh your recollection? Let me look at it more closely. Yes. The fourth part is about navigating cross-examination, right? Yes. How can they have this as a training? Hey, get your $600 a day, Dr. Hughes. Ooh, yikes. Most of your income comes from court-related work, right? No, maybe half. So half of her time she spends. You've raised your rate to $600, correct? It's been the same for some time, but you've raised it. Commensurate with others. Let me see. But you've raised it. She says commensurate with others. Okay. She's trying to keep up with the market. Bach says you've been retained hundreds of times, but you never come into court and testified in defense of a man accused of sex crime, have you? That's correct. I don't evaluate offenders. Interesting. So she seems like more of a psychologist slash victim advocate more than an expert wit. Interesting. Okay, I see what Bach is doing here. Could be some bias. He says you met with the prosecution 6 times to prepare your testimony, right? She says correct. Can we have a sidebar? You may. They go to sidebar and then they come back. Did you discuss the topics with the prosecutors? With all due respect, says Dr. Hughes, it was mostly me educating them. He says, but you know nothing about the case. Were you advising them on how to present the evidence in domestic violence cases? He also says, didn't you help them write the briefs? Can we have a sidebar, says the state? Yes, but I'll keep it brief. Shorter than the last one. They go to sidebar. They come back. Sorry that it wasn't shorter. And then we keep it moving. The judge is talking to the state. And then they ask, what does the state ask? You reviewed some filings of the court in this case. It was all related to the subject of your expert testimony, right? Correct, says Dr. Hughes. In fact, we redacted it. Dr. Hughes said, yes, you did. The state says, you are a board certified forensic psychologist, correct? Yes, says Dr. Hughes. How many of those are in the state of New York? Dr. Hughes says, I think about 40. Then we've got recross up next. Oh, it's maligner. Why am I saying? I can't see y'all. Okay, so it's maligner. So I know what malign means. I was just pronouncing it wrong. Thank you. All right, we've got recross here. Where we go? All right. Combs says to Bach is back up there. Says your defense work is almost entirely of victims or domestic violence, right? Dr. Hughes says, I'm not sure that's true. You work with Brian Steele, who was defending a woman charged with reacting to domestic violence, right? Yes. And Mr. Steele decided not to use you after meeting you. The judge says, move on. No further questions, says Bach. Next witness, yes, and they called George Kaplan. What do y'all think about this, man? Do you think there is some bias coming from Don Hughes, the good doctor Don Hughes? Do you think her testimony should be allowed? And seeing as I think that's interesting. She only testifies to one side. So I want to go back and find some of her testimony from other trials. Maybe we'll do that in the next video. Either way, let me know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat. And thank y'all. I cannot believe I botched maligner like that. Thank you. Exaggerate or feign illness in order to escape work or duty. I said malinger. What did I say? Malingerer? Oh my God. She was interviewed by the defense and was rejected. Amy says, in psychology, no, wait, because there's an R in there. So I am saying it right. What is malingering? Amy says in psychology, malingering is the deliberate fabrication or exaggeration of physical or psychological symptoms for a specific external gain. It's an action, not a diagnosis, and differs from conditions like fictitious disorder, where the motivation is primarily to be seen as ill, which would make sense in this case specifically. Shout out to Amy for that. Very interesting. It's an action, not a diagnosis. A lot of attorneys will use malingering and fictitious disorders interchangeably, but they aren't. Oh, we've got shout out to LAW in here, says malingering is feigning an illness for a measurable gain. Malingering gain is measurable. Fictitious disorders are not for explicit measurable gain. So for all of y'all psychology people in here, Amy, LAW, what do y'all think? Do you think or feel like it applies in this case? Sammy also says, point is, I don't know how the prosecution is setting up racketeering, but I know the defense is doing a hell of a good job destroying the prosecutor's witnesses. And I think either way, at the end of the day, there is some bias here in her testimony. Faking and avoiding, procrastinating, y'all are saying, the act of doing. Yep. She was interviewed by the defense and they said, oh, we good on that. I've been listening to others about her. She's biased, no doubt about it. Listen close, people. Yeah. And I think what we'll do, man, I kind of want to do this today. We won't do it today. But at some point, we're going to go back and review some of Dawn Hughes' testimony to see what she said in other trials. This is very, very interesting. No, Cassie is not malingering, in my opinion. Yeah, and shout out to Amy. Amy's out here killing it. I'm not going to put your business out there, Amy, but she's very well educated and experienced as well. Over a decade of in the field experience in not only court proceedings, but these type of psychological evaluations. So I would call Amy as an expert witness. Shout out to Amy. Cassie is just disconnected, you're saying. So some of y'all are saying yes, Cassie's malingering. Some of you are saying she isn't. How do you tell? I think I mentioned this to Amy the other day. I would be interested. No, I 1000% did mention this to Amy the other day. I would be interested to see just the brain and how it's affected by these type of situations. I know studies have been done on it. I would like to find something maybe a little bit more concise and not as in depth, because I think it wouldn't be as entertaining, but it's definitely something I'll find interesting and want to see for myself. But we had a couple more super chats I'm going to read in here, and then we'll get into another topic. Shout out to my guy, Les Cleaver, in the building. Gifting 5 memberships, always showing support like he does. If you got one of those memberships from Les Cleaver, please make sure you say thank you to him, and also go over and check out some of the members only content if you haven't yet as well. We've got CPE in here with the 10 bomb, just showing love. Thank you, CPE. Always appreciate you. And Amy, I know, she said I was paid as an expert witness many times in court. You know that. I'm trying not to put all your business out there, Amy. Yes, Amy is very, very good at what she does. And she does a lot. So shout out to Amy for being amazing. All right, let's keep it moving. We're going to get into this next one. I actually, as I was doing research for the show today, I stumbled upon TMZ. Apparently, they've got a special they've been running on over on Tubi, and it's episodic, where they've been breaking down each week of the Diddy trial. So we're going to go ahead and get into this episode. Of course, y'all see my guy, Joe Tacopina, up there. Shout out to Joe. And let me see here. Let me see. I need to find this before we keep moving. Oh, why did it disappear? Oh, well, we'll go ahead and get into it in a second. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. What we're going to do is we're going to check out this series by TMZ over on Tubi, where they're breaking down and getting into the details about what's going on each week in the Diddy trial. We're going to hear from some amazing legal experts, as y'all see. We got Nancy Grace up there. We got Ebony K. Williams. We got Joe Tacopina. So this is going to be a great breakdown, and I want to hear y'all's reaction to some of what's being said during this episode. Here we go.
Nancy Grace is the host of Crime Stories with Nancy Grace.
Shout out to Nancy Grace. She's killing it.
Garagos, in some way, shape, or form, represents Diddy. We don't know exactly whether it's the criminal case or not. Maybe he'll tell us someday. We have Ebony K. Williams, the host of Equal Justice and Holding Court, and Joe Tacopina, a fantastic defense lawyer who most recently won the ASAP Rocky case. So I want to start with just reading something from the testimony. The prosecution spent a lot of time on domestic violence. There is no question there was domestic violence, and horrible domestic violence in this case, that went way beyond the video you've seen in 2016. So I just want to give you a couple of examples, and then I want to raise something, because I think there might be a problem here.
He wasn't charged for it.
Did you get into arguments? Cassie, yes, it would result in violence, dragging. Prosecutor, what else did he do? Cassie says, stomp me in the head if I was down. Prosecutor, how frequently did he get violent? Cassie, too frequently. I would get black eyes and bruises. Now, there's another example. This is Cassie. Sean came to my house, and this is when, by the way, she was dating her now husband, Alex Fine, before they got married and Diddy found out they were dating. She says, Sean came to my house and raped me on my living room floor. Prosecutor,
Jesus.
Did you ever have sex with him, Diddy, again? And she says, yes, voluntarily. We had a good night. I went back to his house.
Wait. So wait, was this before? Was this after she was married?
Domestic violence.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Beyond the video you've seen in 2016. So I just want to give you a couple of examples, and then I want to raise something, because I think there might be a problem here. The prosecutor, did you get into arguments? Cassie, yes, it would result in violence, dragging. Prosecutor, what else did he do? Cassie says, stomp me in the head if I was down. Prosecutor, how frequently did he get violent? Cassie, too frequently. I would get black eyes and bruises. Now, there's another example. This is Cassie. Sean came to my house, and this is when, by the way, she was dating her now husband, Alex Fine, before they got married and Diddy found out they were dating.
So this was while she was, this is so, oh man.
She says, Sean came to my house and raped me on my living room floor. Prosecutor, did you ever have sex with him, Diddy, again? And she says, yes, voluntarily. We had a good night. I went back to his house.
All right, all my psychology people in here, and especially Amy, I want y'all to let me know, especially after this video, in the comments in the chat, what is this? This part from a psychological standpoint is very confusing to me. I could see it and I could try and rationalize it. I'm not an expert, so I'm going to let y'all handle that. Wow.
The prosecutor says, can you explain why you did that after he raped you? Cassie says, we had been together for 10 years. My question, and why don't we start with you, Nancy, is that's a crime, if true, but it's a state crime. And he's being charged with a specific federal crime. A lot of people in the courtroom who are covering it, myself included here, I think the circle is incomplete. They haven't connected a lot of this domestic violence, I would even say most, to the criminal acts for which he's charged.
Okay. Well, remember, the state will have a closing argument to connect all the dots, but very clearly what is being made out in this case is forcible rape and extortion. Extortion, what is that? Forcing someone to do something by many means. It could be threatening to release the Freakoff tape. She was in fear of that. It could be fear of a beating, fear of being thrown out of her apartment or her home.
That's
and
fair.
him keeping the key and her throwing her out on the street without her shoes like she testified to. All of that equals extortion, which is one of the federal charges. And not only that, remember, there's a fallback in this case, having people cross state lines to engage in prostitution. We've already made that out. That is a federal crime. Remember all the male sex workers that Diddy's associates, his Confederacy, would fly in and make the travel arrangements for? That's why they were talking about that, Harvey, to prove the element.
Wow. Joe, what do you think? Because I got to tell you, in fact, let me just bring Brian Andrews in. He's our producer who's in the courtroom. Brian, my understanding is there were other people covering this who were wondering the same thing about all the domestic violence.
Well, it seems that was their main show. They were just hoping to make him look as awful as he possibly could in front of this New York jury. And I'll tell you, watching the jurors and their reactions, in the beginning yesterday, they were riveted to what Cassie was saying, and she was stunning. I mean, she walked in, and all eyes were on her. You could not help but have your heart broken as she talked about her love for Diddy through the years, and that she'd do anything, but that the drugs and the possessive nature of it, and just the crazy nature of flying all over the world.
I want to get into the domestic violence because you and I had a discussion about this, that people were wondering about why the focus on that so much, where they were wondering how it connected.
Well, I think
that the thing that's confusing for me is just to clear things up on what I'm asking. The domestic violence and then them being intimate, I get, right? That makes sense to me from a psychological standpoint. What I don't get is them being intimate, the abuse, and then her somehow being raped, right, by him. And then after that, they had another intimate encounter or multiple intimate encounters. And she said, oh, we had a great night. And I see, yeah, don't underestimate the power of oxytocin. It's a neurotransmitter in strong terms, in terms of bonding or binding and forgiving those who you bonded. I get that. But all these things combined, so my question would be where does the sense of her being raped or essayed come from? There's just too much. Cassie needs to, I hope she's getting mental help, because at the end of the day, obviously we know Diddy's a monster, but Cassie seems like she's very, very mentally just not okay in so many ways.
People were wondering why they started this way. I mean, they're trying to prove federal cases, but a lot of the people who have been in the courtroom with me are thinking they're just trying to paint Diddy with the ugliest brush they can.
Good grief, what is wrong with you people? Haven't you seen Mission Impossible? How it starts with an incredible scene? That's what we're doing. Gary goes to Tacopina. Ebony, you all know about trying cases. You know it's true. You start with a bam, and that's what they did.
Mark?
So this is what I would call, and Nancy and I have had this, what would you call it, Nancy? Spirited discussion for many years. She calls this.
You ran away with your tail between your legs mostly, but okay, spirited discussion.
She tells this as, oh my goodness, this is just starting off with a bang. I call this the character assassination block, whether it's this case or any other case.
They didn't do that. He did that to himself. Oh, was that the prosecutor, Emily Johnson, running down the hotel hallways wearing nothing but a towel?
Prosecutors come out and they just assemble all of the worst things that they can do, because obviously it's easier to demonize a defendant. It's easier to make the jury hate the defendant.
Why didn't they just get him for domestic violence?
Is you want a juror to want to help your client. So prosecutors know that. So what do? They call them the defendant. They bring out the worst possible looks for them. They start off with the worst day that any defendant's ever had. That is what prosecutors
the worst possible
do.
looks.
Mark, come on. You mean they're doing
that
this?
wasn't prosecutor Emily Johnson running down the hall in a towel. That was Diddy. He did that to himself.
There's a reason why you're not supposed to have bad character evidence. There's a reason why judges make decisions as to whether it's more prejudicial than probative. That's the legal standard. And the reason they do that is you're not supposed to convict or prosecute by proxy. You're supposed to, as Harvey kind of set it up. I get it, Nancy, but the whole idea is there's a case.
They're crimes. That's Tacopina. Come on.
They're crimes.
You're a veteran defense lawyer, but you know Garagos is totally lying right now.
Okay. I want to move on to something else, because Nancy, you talked about this right off the top about extortion, that he was threatening to release these tapes. I want to see what you guys think of this, because I don't see this loop being closed here. So the big one they talked about, they were in Cannes and on a boat, and Diddy accused Cassie of stealing drugs from him, and he threatened her with this freak-off video. And they get on a plane.
Not great.
And how did you get back to New York, the prosecutor says. And she says, on a commercial flight, I traded my seat to get away, but he traded to get next to me. So they go on from that. And they say, well, what did he show you? She says, freak-off videos. He played them for me on one of his laptops. He said he'd release them. Well, how did you feel? She says, trapped. And then they go on, and I think this is interesting. When you landed in New York, what did you do? Well, we went to dinner, and then he wanted to have a freak-off, so we had a freak-off. Why did you do it? To make him not threaten me. She never said that the extortion of saying I'm going to release the tape had anything to do with the freak-off. That had to do with drugs. So again, I don't see that they closed the loop on that. And I want to just give you one more.
Harvey's cooking right now.
When she was dating Alex Fine, her now husband. The question, what, if anything, were you afraid would happen physically if you refused to do a freak-off? She says, I mean, it was always in the back of my mind that I would somehow be hurt by him. And she goes on to say she's worried about the tapes being released. So I'm confused about this, because they've never connected the extortion to the freak-off. And that seems to be what they have to prove. Joe, am I off base here?
No, you're right. You're right. Look, you're 100% right, because even that testimony that you just heard and read, and you read it verbatim, is not extortion. An extortionate threat is, or an extortionate demand is, I will do this unless you give me this. I will release the tape unless you engage in a freak-off. That's not what we heard here.
At all.
Was having to do with retribution about stealing drugs or not stealing drugs, and that's not extortion. That's revenge, revenge porn. That's a different, maybe another crime. But all the crimes we've discussed so far are state crimes, and they are crimes. Nancy is right about that. They're crimes, and they have done a great job, the prosecution, at making Sean Combs look like a horrific human being, an absolute horrific human being. But we are talking about federal charges here. So yes, they are crimes. They're just not the crimes that he's charged with in federal court, at least not yet.
That's what we've been saying.
Don't forget, the cross-examination, this whole case, Harvey, I've been saying this to you since day one, since reading the indictment. the whole case will boil down to one issue: consent. Consent or not consent, because everything else falls if there is consent. And if you look at some of those recordings of those text messages, the responses from her, they are consensual. And
yes, say it again, Joe. Say it again. Not only were they consensual, but Cassie asked for him on multiple occasions. Where's the trafficking, guys? That's what we're talking about. You want to talk about domestic violence? Fine. We can do that. Joe Tacopina said it, the man himself. State charges, federal charges of trafficking. It comes down to consent. Now, y'all have heard me say consent is nasty. I hate consent cases because it's one of the biggest gray areas, in my opinion, in the legal system that you can get into. So it's going to be tough either way. And I think just because, as Joe said, the prosecution's making Diddy look like a monster, they're going to have to get him for something. What that will be, we don't know. But trafficking, come on, man. Joe is a beast. We got to get Joe back on the show.
You know, she could say on the witness stand, well, I wrote those things because I loved him. But it's hard for a jury to say, look, you know, she's saying I want more freak-offs. But
okay,
she
let me
didn't
get
really
in here,
want more
Joe.
freak-offs.
Joe, let me get in here because I do actually think Harvey's wrong on the premise here. I think both of you are doing a great job, you and Harvey and our friend Mark here down at the bottom, cherry picking certain facts and elements where maybe there were elements of consent present. We all heard the testimony, but there's other facts. Let's talk about the Kid Cudi testimony, shall we? Where Cassie Ventura is saying very clearly that Sean Combs, when she was briefly dating Kid Cudi throughout the on and off of Sean Combs' relationship, that Sean Combs violently and viciously threatened arson, threatened to blow this man's car up if Cassie Ventura left the freak off, left with Kid Cudi, and pursued romantic relationships with her. She then gets afraid, gets in the car with Kid Cudi when he pulls up to pick her up. And then ultimately, Sean Combs says, not only am I going to release the tapes if you move forward with this Kid Cudi situation and relationship, I'm also going to hurt him and hurt you. And then we know via the New York Times, I believe, reported that Kid Cudi affirmed to them and their sourcing that a car blew up in his driveway some days after Sean Combs made that threat. So I think this is a clear example where the loop is closed, Harvey.
Well, certainly what they're opening the door for is racketeering, which we're going to get into in a minute. But the Kid Cudi thing is really interesting because she testified while she was dating Kid Cudi. She also was doing freak-offs with Diddy. And when asked why, her answer, and I still don't know how to process this, she said, it's my job. It was my job. And I'm wondering what that means.
It could mean several things, Harvey. You're right.
It could mean a lot of stuff.
You know, I was willingness, but it also could mean I didn't feel free to leave. It could mean that I was so in a constant, this is the psychological warfare, I think, that could be argued. I think it is subtly being argued. I think it will be more aggressively be argued by the prosecution later in the case and testimony. But that there was a constant fear of threat of physical violence, which is why I think they spent so much time harping, if you will, on the physical abuse. And also, let's note, ladies and gentlemen, one fact pattern can be true of a multitude of criminal activity. The same
I just realized y'all couldn't see Joe.
Kicking in the head and beating that does lay the case successfully for a state prosecution of domestic violence is also, and I believe it's clause 4 of the federal indictment, where they do go into detail about how physical abuse, kicking, punching, dragging, beating is a part of the criminal behavior that Sean Combs coerced in their broader racketeering count. So I think that's their plan.
How does that go into RICO? I'm not seeing
Mark and
Levin.
Yes, Nancy.
No offense to you, Levin, or Garagos, or Tacopina, but you just don't get it, all right? You think a woman on this jury is going to believe that Cassie Ventura wanted to be filmed naked and glistening pursuant to Sean Combs' request, just drenched in baby oil, and literally choke on a male sex worker's urine?
Yes, Nancy, they're gonna believe it. You know why? Because multiple times Cassie planned it and she asked for it. So yes, they're gonna believe it. Cassie said, "You're the only one that can bring this side of me out."
Hey, yo.
I think women on this jury are looking at Cassie like, girl, get some help. What you got going on? They 1000% are going to believe that Nancy. I think Nancy doesn't get it in this case.
She took a massive piss into her mouth. She choked. You think that was consensual? Good luck selling that to a jury.
Hey, Mark, I was going to actually raise that because that testimony about Sean Combs and the sex worker both peeing on Cassie to a point where she's choking, whether or not she verbally objected.
In her mouth. You said on her.
Mouth. In her mouth.
In her mouth.
In her mouth. And how does the defense overcome that? Because,
thank you, Nancy.
You know, whether she expressly said to him, don't do that or not, how are they going to overcome something like that? I mean, how will the defense?
I think that's exactly what they're counting on. I think they're counting on the fact that you get the Nancy Grace doesn't like baby oil or doesn't like being urinated on feeling, and that's what they're counting on. I think if you
that's
take
pretty
a look,
general. It's not just Nancy Grace.
I've been around long enough.
Combs
Nancy.
did this to himself. The state is not painting him out as a villain. He shot his own foot.
When Nancy calms down for a second, you seem to be kind of excited by all this, but hold on. There are some very.
I'll give Nancy a break.
I'm responding to you, Nancy. I'm not going to say that this is what you're into, but there are a lot of people. I'm not into crushing mice with high heels, or not into a lot of things that are fetishes. I don't know what's going on. All I know is this is in somebody's private sexual behavior, and it isn't something that I'm comfortable getting into and piling onto and talking about. And by the way, I will just say,
and you should make that argument to a jury. You notice Takapena got real quiet.
Why don't you just?
No, I'm not quiet.
He knows that's BS.
I just want to interrupt anyone.
Why don't you hold on for 1 second? I would find a lot of things more credible.
This is great.
If the first place they went was not to a civil lawyer, and if the second place they went was not to a money lawyer, I would find things more credible. I would think if somebody is feeling this way, that you don't. It's kind of like what I always say when there's a civil auto accident case. Do you go to the hospital first, or do you call 1-800? I'm injured. And I think that those are the kinds of things that most people, if they're looking at this dispassionately, are going to.
Hey, Joe, stop being quiet. Come on.
Discounting Mark. How battered women are treated, and that they don't report.
Joe, try to get
Come on, Joe.
Edgewise, Joe.
I know, Mark. I just don't want to be rude to anyone, but look, here's the deal. They're doing a great job making him out to be a horrific human being. We all knew that was coming. Okay. Whether or not this amounts to federal crimes is another story.
It doesn't.
There's been so much evidence of consent in this case. Her being urinated on, whether she wants to or not, is not a federal crime. It's disgusting. It's not a federal crime. I mean, look, let's go down to the issue of, look, I was a former sex crimes prosecutor. Okay, so I am not insensitive to these issues that women have when they're sex crimes victims. I'm not. Yeah. But I will say this to you. It's fair game and it's fodder that if someone claims to be raped by someone, it's fair game to question that. Why would they go back to their rapist, to their torture?
Thank you, Joe. My guy. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to let him finish talking. Joe. I'm going to hit up Joe. We got to get Joe back over here because I know he was... Joe was frustrated with this panel because, man, we got to get Joe up here and let him cook. I'm gonna bring Joe back on the show, y'all. I will let you know when that's gonna happen. Stay tuned for that. It'll be soon. We got to get Joe up here and let him cook. Here we go.
It's not a federal crime.
He's right.
It is when it's done through coercion, though, right, Joe?
Let's go down to the issue of, look, I was a former sex crimes prosecutor. Okay, so I am not insensitive to these issues that women have when they're sex crimes victims.
1,000%.
But I will say this to you. It's fair game and it's fodder that if someone claims to be raped by someone, it's fair game to question that. Why would they go back to their rapist, to their torturer, their tormentor, and have consensual sexual relations with them again?
It's called Stockholm syndrome. Am I right, Nancy Grace?
Okay.
It's called Stockholm syndrome.
No.
She said they had a good night. How do you have a good night with someone who raped you? I mean, that's
Thank you.
This is the psychological warfare, Joe.
Stop.
Right.
Okay. By the way,
there's
Ebony
always an excuse for
Joe,
some action, right? She didn't go to the police ever. She went to a lawyer. She went to write a book. She went to sell her book. She got $20 million.
She went to a lawyer years and years and years later. And I am not going to stand by and let the two of you guys pretend that women are not beaten and raped in marriages every day and they don't tell police.
It's fair game.
Okay, so
Joe is 1,000% right. I'm gonna stop it there. We'll let Harvey go in a minute. Joe's 1,000% right, and I think that's how the majority of jurors will see it. Obviously, you have people who have been involved in domestic violence cases and people who have experienced it personally. They're gonna look at this a different way. But if you looking at it as someone who would have to make a ruling for or against Diddy, you can't sit here and see what was said and what was done in years and years and years and years of no action by Cassie, and years of Cassie willingly and consensually participating and say, oh, she's a victim. Come on, man.
Is that Cassie is a really believable witness. And this cuts both ways, because
where, Harvey?
From my eye, she talked about issues that maybe hurt the prosecution's case. She did, acknowledge love letters that were sent. She did acknowledge things about not only loving freak-offs, but loving them as recently as 2017, well into their relationship. I think this all makes her so much more believable, that she's not trying to paint a picture of perfection on the prosecution side. But at the same time, when she says in texts that I would love to have another freak-off, and she said it in 2009, she said it in 2017, and they started dating in 2008, and that's when they started the freak-offs. When she starts talking about loving him, being jealous of Kim Porter, and wanting to be the main girl and doing freak-offs because she was afraid he would do it with another woman. I don't know. I mean,
Harvey,
she was honest, but does that not hurt her?
Harvey,
Does it not hurt the prosecutor?
Let me ask you a basic question, Harvey. We know that men can rape their wives, right?
Yes.
We know that. And we know
It's a
that
bad
if
example.
a husband were to rape his wife, or in this case, be in a romantic relationship and rape his romantic partner, that is still rape, even if after that particular rape instance occurs, they reconcile and then have a consensual sexual relationship. That does not negate the rape, correct?
It does not negate the rape.
That's not the factual pattern you have here. That's not what you have here.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm asking.
That's
we don't
not
know
the relationship. That's a different scenario. That's a different factual scenario.
Thank
she did
you.
not reconcile with him. She was on another relationship already. So
No,
there was
she
no
did.
reconciliation.
No, that's not true, Joe. They did reconcile. She said I was with them on
Well, they
and
were
off
on. They were on and off. They were on and off by that point.
So this was
not
constantly
reconciliation.
reconciling and breaking up.
It's
Yes,
not
of course it is, Joe. It's
reconciliation at all.
You never been in anything on again, off again? I have. We reconcile, we break up.
I don't know
Nancy, it
a lot
happens all
of
the
women.
time.
And listen, I find when I was a prosecutor and prosecuting sex crimes cases, I found women jurors to be most harsh critics of
Thank
women
you.
when they were testifying. I really did.
Yep.
And I found that if some woman testified that she was raped and then went back to their rapist and said, I love you, I miss you, can we
Done.
make love again, and that kind of stuff, it really hurt the credibility of that
That is a
witness.
very
And I'm
short.
sorry.
That's a
I
very
think that's fair.
short-sighted.
I think that's
That is a
fair game.
very
It's not
short-sighted woman.
That's fair
That's a very
game.
short-sighted woman.
And great, Ebony. You know what? We don't care. You know why? Because those short-sighted women that you want to sit here and shame are most likely going to be on the jury. They've been on juries. And I'm sure Joe Tacopina has seen it hundreds of times, as he said. And this is a great reason I love having these conversations, because we get a say in this, guys. Ebony K. Williams, an attorney. Nancy Grace, an attorney. Joe Tacopina, an elite attorney. And at the end of the day, there are 12 people who are just like me, who are just like you, that are going to get to decide what we think, how we see it. So we get to have the conversation right along with these amazing professionals because we get a say. And that's why I love these conversations, because we get to disagree with an Ebony Williams who has all this experience and who thinks they're short-sighted women. Oh, well, Cassie went back. We'll be short-sighted. Cassie should have stayed her butt away. Great conversation, man. Shout out to TMZ for this. I will leave a link to the full series over on Tubi, and we'll be reviewing more of this later on. Y'all make sure you stay tuned and let me know what you think about this in the comments and in the chat. Wow. We got to get Joe back up here. I'm gonna hit Joe up and see if he wants to come up here. I know he will, but this is wild to see how all of this is playing out. And I gotta side with my guy Joe on this one. I don't think it's a great look. I don't think they're showing trafficking, and the fact that she's like, oh, he assaulted me. Oh, I want to do a freak off again. Oh, I want to see this person. Oh, I want to go back to Diddy. Is Diddy a narcissist? Yes. And so is Cassie. Cassie needs some help, some serious help. I'll read a couple super chats in here. Shout out to the gang. We got Kara Hampton in here asking how it's going. It's going great. Thank you for the 5-bomb, Kara, and reminding us as always to have a great day on purpose. Shout out to you. I appreciate you. My dog, Mr. Tesla's in the building, says just because. Appreciate you, man. And thank you for the support with the 2-bomb. Also, we've got my awesome, amazing Amy in here with the cake. She's ready for cake time. I know y'all got a lot to say about this one. We're not arguing domestic violence. Again, y'all put that aside. Obviously, Diddy was an abuser. There's domestic violence involved. But also, she was not trafficked. I'm not seeing it. I don't believe it. That is where it is. So I guess Ebony K. Williams would call me short-sighted in this case. Oh, well, you got to do a job to convince me, because the burden of proof is on the prosecution, and I ain't seeing it. Some of y'all are, though. She went back because some things y'all criticize are real. Happy to see everyone not in those situations are so strong. I got a lot to say on that one. I hate when people try to say that what they do is universal and not ever put themselves in anyone else's shoes on how they may feel or think. Yeah, I don't know if that's the jury's responsibility in this case. I think the jury's responsibility is to decide whether the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Cassie was trafficked. Period. That's it. Shout out to EM in the building. Shout out to EM. I heard it was your birthday. Thank you for the 5-bomb in there. I appreciate it. And yeah, y'all can say whatever you want to. Again, there's going to be people in the jury that think like me, that think like a lot of y'all in the chat. So at the end of the day, we're going to have our opinions and we'll have to decide. Thank you, Em. I appreciate it. Those pics of the freak off men are the prostitutes, not Cassie. Interesting point. I mean, the defense attorney said that she looked like she was enjoying herself, which she clearly was because she asked for it again, right? I agree. I agree, Amy. I said the same thing. Cassie is not innocent in any way. No, she got beat up on. For sure. But charge him with domestic violence. I'm not seeing trafficking. Not seeing it. And I haven't seen it yet. So we'll keep looking. We'll keep looking at the evidence and see how it plays out. But if y'all say trafficking, I can't see the trafficking. The drugs could have controlled Cassie's mind and feeling trapped. Oh, so when she said, I want to have a freak off, she was on drugs. Is that what you're saying? It's about self-accountability as well for everything we do in our lives. It's not self-blame. Sometimes we don't get because we just don't want to. Oh, shout out to EM in Switzerland. That's dope. What else are y'all saying? Thank you and shout out to all 400 plus of y'all that have liked the video so far. They were all on drugs. Everybody was on drugs. Diddy was on drugs. The workers were on drugs. I think people get the nuances, but they also need to prove he did some things. People lie too. She got stacks of millions for this, so people have to question whether she's telling the truth. And that's the thing too, when talking about, as Joe brought up, her being a credible witness. Women are going to be so critical, and a lot more critical. I'm not saying this. The Joe Tacopina, one of the most elite attorneys in the nation, is saying this. When they see that Cassie was saying, oh yeah, let's do it again. Oh, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just give me 20 million and we're good. Brutal. Amy says in the beginning she was groomed because she was 19 and Diddy was 40. However, she got 30 million and settled the DV. That is what she was a victim of, but all this other stuff, she isn't a victim. Yes. I agree, Amy. I agree. The dog was on drugs. Cuddy's poor dog. That poor dog was traumatized because somebody broke into the house. He had to go to... His babysitter saw it. Yeah, and again, you know, this for all of our DV, our DV victims and DV advocates, this might not be the trial for y'all, because what Amy says is a fact, and it might be, the jury's going to see that, and the jury is going to be made up of people who are looking at it that way. You can't be guilty for being a freak. He's charged with sex trafficking. Yeah. And y'all have to remember too, the jury might be made up of people who haven't experienced DV, and all they have is what they're seeing presented to them by the prosecution, what they're hearing from the experts, and how they analyze what's been presented. And me looking at what's been presented, not having been a victim, that's just how I see it. And the jurors, they might see it the same way. You just have to accept it. She indulged in the lifestyle the whole dang time. It's only a problem because it was brought to light. If not, she would still be doing it. Oh, man. You think so? I think so. Cassie was a victim from day one. Diddy was a predator, and y'all have to understand how he manipulated her. That's not what she testified to, so that's actually false. So I disagree with that, because that's not what Cassie testified to at all. So I think maybe y'all need to go back and check the testimonies just to make sure, but that's not how it went down, especially at the beginning, because Cassie was already with somebody else. She was with Ryan Leslie, and she wanted to advance her career, and she saw Diddy, and she was like, woo, I'm signed with Diddy now. Maybe this will be a good opportunity. Nope. Not buying it. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If y'all could, make sure you like the video on your way out. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thank you for spending your Memorial Day with us again. Thank you. Thank you to all our servicemen and women, and especially those who paid the ultimate price by giving their lives to defend our freedom, defend this amazing country, the greatest country on earth. And thank y'all for being here to support. Y'all go celebrate. Have a great time. Enjoy your day off if you're off today. And we're going to be back tomorrow. Karen Reed starting back up tomorrow. It's going to be fun. I appreciate y'all. And as always, you know what to do. Keep growing, keep pushing, keep it classy. We gone. Peace.